What's up, guys? So today I wanted to revisit the Galaxy Note 9 here because this phone, I believe, recently got a May security patch as well. So that's why kind of sparked my memory a little bit here. But the Galaxy Note 9 is a very interesting device because I always make claims about this phone being still one of the best cheap stylus phones to get. I think these are better than the Moto G phones that you would get, simply because if you want a phone with a built-in stylus, you typically want to go with a Samsung device because the stylus software is just way more integrated, and also the quality of the stylus is better. This phone is still sitting at around $223 right now on the Amazon refurbished renewed, the same one that I have. So this phone actually still is very powerful in 2022. I think the only downside to this phone, again, is most likely it's not getting software updates. And some of you guys were pointing out the design is starting to look dated, which I agree. If you look at some of the newer phones, the newer Note phones and stuff like that, you can tell it's a bit of an older phone, but most people put a case on their phones anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Now, when you pick the Note 9 up, it's still a really nice piece of hardware. It's a glass and metal device, and it's really nice premium feeling phone here. We got the classic Note body style. Everything is very squared off on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. We got our physical fingerprint scanner on the back here, and it's just a really well built phone. And also, one thing to note about the hardware is that this phone still has a headphone jack on it, which is pretty nice, and this phone still has micro SD card support, which a lot of the newer flagship phones do not have these days. Also, you have stereo speakers on the top and up front here, which we will get into, but I think hardware wise it's still a very solid feeling phone. Now, this phone still has a pretty good display on here even in 2022. It's actually a Super AMOLED display. It's HDR10. It has a slight curve to it as well, and this phone is actually a full 1440p display, and it is 516 for the PPI, and it's still a very good looking display. There's no notch on this phone, or no punch hole on this phone, which is a huge benefit for a lot of people. Now, yes, there is a bit of bezel on this phone, but I think that the display still looks fine, especially this phone not having any type of notch or punch hole. When you're playing games, everything just looks still really nice on here. And like I said, it is a 1440p display with a very high PPI, so the icons and everything still look good. The colors are still really vibrant on here, still pretty bright for outdoor use. So the display really, to me, hasn't aged at all. The only thing about the display on here would be that it doesn't have a, like 120 hertz display or anything like that. But as far as image quality, the display is still a top-notch flagship quality display here. Now, let's talk about these specs a little bit more. The Note 9 has the Snapdragon 845 chip on here. It also has the Adreno 630 micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM, and we are running Android 10. Now, this phone does have a pretty good community as far as the rooting community goes, with porting newer versions of Android onto it. Now, I don't really get into that because I bricked so many phones and messed so many phones up back in the day. But yeah, so as far as this phone performance now on the latest security patch, it still runs really good. Now, of course, it's not going to be able to max out, graphic settings. So these are graphic settings for something like PUBG, but it still does a really good job, I think, at playing PUBG, playing other games. I think it does a great job, just as good as any, newer mid-range phone these days, if not better. So as far as like the heat and stuff like that, this phone does get a little bit warm, but it's nowhere near as bad as the newer phones, the new 8 Gen, I can't talk today, this 888 processor and the 8 Gen 1 processor does not heat up nowhere near as bad as those phones. But this still does a pretty good job. It doesn't lag and frame drop really. It does pretty good at gaming, and overall just general performance. It is pretty snappy device here. So I want to talk about the Stylus a little bit more for you guys. So if you are into digital artwork, you really want to get a Samsung device. It could be really compelling to get a Moto G series phone and stuff like that, but Samsung, they really make some of the best stylus. And like I said, this phone, $200. It's really nice. It has a lot of the same features that you would find in the newer Note phones. It's still very accurate as far as these as far as the pen, and you're really buying this over the Motorola phones because of the software integration. Samsung has so much software stuff that you can take advantage of with these Note phones. As far as taking notes and stuff like that, the Motorola Stylus is really just a bear. It's really kind of like a cheap stylus compared to this one. This one is also Bluetooth connected. It's got a button on here so you can do your shortcuts and stuff like that. And there's just a ton of stuff that you can do with your stylus on here. So I definitely would highly recommend buying this phone, especially if you somebody that's into digital artwork and you need something. One of my favorite things is if you're taking photos, you just hit the button, it'll snap the photo. And also if you're like making videos, you can stand at a distance and hit the record button, the photo button. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with the stylus on here. Like I said, it's the most accurate stylus. It's not like a cheap little stylus. It's actually legit. As far as the One UI software on here, it is, you know, an older version of Android, but a lot of your stuff on here is still here. So Samsung desktop support is here, secure folders still here, screen recording still here, Dolby Atmos, dark mode, Samsung Kids mode is still on here. So you're not really missing out on anything as far as software wise. Also, I'll show you guys the Geekbench scores for the Curious Minds here. 508, is this the latest one? Yeah, so around this is what you would typically get, so you can compare those scores to another phone if you want to. And also I think I ran the Antutu scores on here as well too. So these are your Antutu scores on here as well too, so you can go ahead and compare those. So this phone is still pretty powerful. It's not like it's super laggy or slow or anything like that. Also, some of the additional features is the fingerprint scanner works really well on here. You also have the iris scanner on here, so you can take advantage of that. And then you also have on here, like I said, that headphone jack. So if you're a diehard headphone jack fan, this is on here. I think what's going to take a lot of people by surprise is that the Galaxy Note 9 still has somewhat of a pretty decent camera in 2022. It's got a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto lens with 2x optical zoom. The only thing I can see that's age here just a little bit is if you take this out of like good lighting, it could get a little bit soft as far as like the dynamic range shots. But other than that, if you're in good lighting, you'll be extremely impressed with how crisp and nice the photos come out as far as the color. In good lighting, this takes some pretty shockingly amazing photos in my opinion. I'm always impressed when I take shots on here. But like I said, when you take it out of good lighting, low light, it's like, yeah, you know, it's not as good. But it has 4K 60 video, 8 megapixel selfie cam. It shoots in 1440p as well too. And I was pretty impressed with the photos. Like I said, the video is also pretty solid on here. And also, you know, I think that the ultra wide has become sort of the standard lens as far as the secondary lens, which this does not have. But I'm telling you, if you can get past that, the photos are actually pretty crazy on this phone. I still think they're pretty good, especially if you're in some good lighting. You will be pretty impressed. Now, speaker quality on the Note 9 is still pretty good, and also the vibration motor on this phone is pretty good, so you'll definitely be able to feel this phone ringing. So speaker quality, I think is still pretty good on here. So even when you cover this bottom speaker, the top speaker is putting in a good amount of work, really good bass quality, good mids and highs. I still think it's a fantastic speaker. All right, so pretty much the last thing on here is really the battery life. So how is the battery life on this phone? So the battery life is just kind of okay on this phone. I can squeeze about maybe 5 hours of screen on time out of this phone. So it's got a 4,000 milliamp battery, 15 watt charging, wireless charging. It depends on how you use it, but you can get somewhere between almost 6 hours, which is pretty much a full day. So it does pretty decent with battery life. But yeah, for me, it's like close to that 5 hours, almost 6 hours, depending on how you use it. So yeah, so I think this is still a fantastic device. Like I said, the main selling point with this device for anybody that is trying to get a phone with a stylus, you really want to go for this phone. There's really not anything that this phone can't do. And it does a lot of things better than a lot of mid-range or budget phones, as far as having a really crispy display, having SD card support, having a headphone jack, and also having Samsung desktop support and all the little One UI features that you would get. It does a lot of things right, and the stylus is very high quality. Alright, so that is pretty much it, guys. Be sure to let me know, what do you guys think about the Note 9 in 2022, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.